Alright YouTube, I'm Jerry, it's Egypt.
Welcome to day 5 of our Egypt honeymoon. This is the Pyramids Visitor Centre. This was built in 2022 and it has a load of information about the site. It's home to this 3D model of the entire complex, which is a pretty cool feature. From here, it's a short bus journey to the first stop towards the pyramids, where you can have a camel ride up to the 9 pyramid point, which is where you can see 9 pyramids all at once. Definitely worth a go if you're not afraid of camels or heights. According to mainstream history, this entire complex was built in the 4th dynasty, starting with the Great Pyramid built for Khufu between 2589 and 2566 BC. So that's 23 years of construction, but different historians will give you different dates because no one really knows. The middle pyramid was built for Khafre, who was Khufu's son, between 2558 and 2532 BC, so 26 years of construction, somehow longer than the Great Pyramid even though it's smaller. The third pyramid was for Menkaure and was constructed between 2532 and 2503 BC, so 29 years. Again, even smaller, but took even longer to build, so the whole thing seems questionable really. Considering these 3 pyramids are made out of over 6 million blocks, that's not including the causeways, floors, temples and mastabas, and have a combined weight of over 15 million tons. Again, that's just for the pyramids themselves. We're supposed to believe that all of this was completed within 86 years by a civilization that only had copper tools, wooden sleds, and no access to pulleys or even the wheel. Even at a conservative number of blocks of 6 million, that's one block quarried, cut, transported and placed every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 86 years. Sounds pretty unbelievable, and this doesn't even include time to design, find the quarries, and leaves zero room for error in construction. Also, according to mainstream history, the pyramids were tombs for the kings, even though no mummies were ever found inside any of them. I think they were assumed to be tombs simply because there were boxes found inside the king's chamber of each pyramid, but the chances are the boxes had a different purpose than to be a burial place. Once we were done with our camel ride, we hopped back on the bus to go down to the pyramids. This is the funerary temple of Khafre and it sits in front of the middle pyramid. It was built with limestone and used to be covered in granite casing stones, but like lots of the monuments around Egypt, they've been pillaged by later civilizations when they wanted to build stuff with it. If you have a keen eye, you can find some of the remaining casing stones. These were used to protect the limestone structure due to their much more weather-resistant properties, but since they've been removed, it's allowed the elements to erode the limestone. This block that's laying in front of these casing stones used to be on top of the one that's behind the casing stones, but as time passed, it became so weathered that it fell off. The time it takes for this to happen is absolutely immense, and when you consider that weathering would have only started after the casing stones have been removed, it really puts the timeline into question. Consider this, the limestone that isn't subject to being underwater tends to erode at roughly 1 centimetre every 2,000 years. And by the looks of these blocks, some of them have been eroded by at least a couple of feet. So with my calculations, this means that the limestone had to have been exposed to the elements for at least 120,000 years after the casing stones were removed to cause this damage, unless there was a massive amount of rainfall in the area that we haven't been told about. So the idea that this temple is only around 4,500 years old is questionable at best, which throws up even more questions about the age of the entire complex. This is the Pyramid of Khafre, and it stands at a whopping 136 meters tall, which is 300 cubits, and it has a base length of 215.5 meters, which is 411 cubits, with an angle of 53 degrees, which is almost as steep as the supposed incorrect angle at the bent pyramid as we saw in the previous video. As you can see at the top, it still includes some of the original casing stones on the top section of the pyramid. This is the Pyramid of Khufu, or aptly named the Great Pyramid. When it was complete, it stood at a massive 146.5 meters tall, which is 320 cubits, and it has a side length of 230 meters, which is 503 cubits. Some of the stones used to build the platform for this pyramid are absolutely massive as well, but often get overlooked due to the overwhelming stature of the pyramid itself. This pyramid is steeped in mystery and apparent coincidence. First coincidence that I'm going to mention is its latitude to the equator. It sits at 29.9792 degrees north, which is strange when you consider that the speed of light is 299,792 kilometers per second. This one could be just pure coincidence, as the ancient Egyptians didn't even use the same meters as we do, but it's still a strange thing to note. The next one I'm going to mention is the height and base circumference in relation to the Earth. For this, it's a bit of a deeper dive, but when you scale up the Great Pyramid by 43,200, it gives you the relative size of the Earth, with the height of the pyramid being equal to the polar radius of the Earth, and the circumference of the base now becomes equal to the circumference of the Earth at the equator. 43,200 is significant due to the wobble of the Earth, which is called the precession of the equinox, and it takes roughly 72 years for the Earth to move 1 degree in this wobble. So if you reduce it down and call 72 years 1 precessional day, then 2 months of precession becomes 60 days. And then over those 60 days of precession, that's 4,320 years. You multiply that by 10, gives you 43,200. This gives us a hint that whoever built this pyramid knew exactly how large the Earth was, and also they have measured the precession that barely changes in a lifetime, which raises a whole load more questions about the capabilities of the society that built it. Another cool fact about the pyramid is it's aligned with true north within 1/20th of a degree. All this is telling me that whoever built this had much more knowledge of the entire planet than we give them credit for, and all these facts combined seemed planned rather than just coincidence. There are loads more strange properties about this pyramid and the entire complex, but to go into them all would make this video hours long, so if you're interested, there are a load of videos on YouTube that you can look into if this kind of thing interests you. So after walking around the outside, you have to climb up these stairs to get into the pyramid. These stairs were carved out by later civilizations to get in because there was no way to get in when it was originally built. Once inside, you go through this carved out tunnel to get to the ascending passageway. Once you get to the top of the ascending passageway, you're met with the Grand Gallery, which is absolutely massive, and the ceiling looks very similar to that inside the Red Pyramid, but it's sloping upwards. This fenced off area will take you to the Queen's Chamber. If you want to come and have a look inside this pyramid, I hope you don't mind getting sweaty and surrounded by crowds. It gets very warm in there, being above ground, unlike the Red Pyramid. Once you've made it all the way up the Grand Gallery, you have to climb this small ladder, and then you go through a small passage, and then you're in the King's Chamber. I was quickly told by security that I had to stop filming inside due to flash damaging the stone. Even though I wasn't using flash at all, it just seems like a very bizarre rule to me. However, I was allowed to take photos, so here they are. These ceiling blocks are absolutely massive, weighing somewhere in the region of 60 tons each. They're around 8 meters long and they're made from Aswan granite. Keep in mind that Aswan is 900 kilometers away from the Giza Plateau, which is a huge distance to move stones of this size. The ceiling is also roughly 50 meters above the base of the pyramid, which is an engineering feat on its own. I cannot even begin to imagine how difficult it would have been to get these blocks into place and build this chamber. The chamber is 10 cubits wide, 11.1 cubits tall and 20 cubits long, and all encoded within it is the same 3, 4, 5 sacred geometry as I noted in the bent pyramid. I could do a deep dive into this, but again, this video would end up being really long. So if you're interested, just Google King's Chamber 345 and you'll be able to discover all of the answers for yourself. There's also the box in here as well, which is probably the reason why they think it was a tomb. This hole in a wall is actually a shaft that bends around the Grand Gallery. It's now time to make our way back out of the pyramid via the same Grand Gallery and ascending passageway past all the crowds to get out. Once we walk back round the pyramid a little bit, you get to the Eastern Cemetery. You'll note all of the holes in the ground as well. These are really deep, so definitely hold on tight to all of your belongings as there'll be no way of getting them back if you drop them down. Now here is the famous Great Sphinx, apparently built somewhere between 2600 and 2500 BC, but no one really knows. Especially when you consider there's evidence that Khufu may have repaired or restored some of the Sphinx during his reign. If it was less than 50 years old at the time, the chances of it needing any repair is very unlikely, making it seem that this may be much older than we're led to believe. The geologist Robert Schoch did a lot of research on the weathering of the Sphinx, and due to the water erosion on the enclosure walls, he has reason to believe that this might have even been built before 10,000 BC. You should definitely look into his work if you want to find out more. After hopping a wall to get in front of the Sphinx, we found these really strangely cut blocks. They're actually amazing because the angles, slopes and consistency would be basically impossible to make by hand. I think they were making people ask too many questions because there's a load more of them behind this fence, so most visitors don't even realise that they're there. Next we go to the Valley Temple, which was apparently constructed at the same time as the funerary temple that's in front of the middle pyramid, but the weathering on this temple says otherwise. Even compared to the Sphinx temple that's right next to it, it looks much newer. As you enter the temple, you'll notice this big pit in the ground. This is where they found that diorite statue, you know, the one that's apparently of Khafre, that's displayed in the old Egyptian museum. It's in a previous video if you want to take a look. One thing to note is the difficulty it would have been to shape a lot of these blocks that go in the corners. They fit together so perfectly and it's absolutely incredible to see up close. It just begs the question, why would they bother to go into so much effort into these corners rather than to just stand them next to each other? There are 16 of these massive square red granite pillars. These used to hold up the roof that's no longer there. On the way out, you can find these alabaster-faced blocks that still remain behind a gate. The entire temple used to have these blocks covering the entire floor, so it would have looked incredible. Once you've exited the Valley Temple, you can get a more up-close view of the Sphinx. This area does get pretty crowded as everyone's just standing around taking selfies. You can also get a better view of the enclosure walls from here, and it definitely looks like water weathering to me. After this amazing day, it was nice to watch the sunset from our new room ready for our anniversary. If you come to Egypt, you definitely have to go to the Giza Plateau like we did, because the structures there are some of the most incredible on the entire planet. So this is day 6, and as it was our anniversary today, I didn't actually film that much. Just this view from the club lounge in the Sheraton that was included with our upgraded room. One thing that's definitely a bonus about the club lounge is you can actually see the pyramids from here. In the evening, we went for a lovely dinner cruise on the Nile. Watching the sunset from the water was definitely an experience. Thanks for joining me for these final 2 days in Cairo, but we're only halfway through the trip to Egypt, so there's much more footage on the way.